Wendy.
Wow, thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here. As Linda said, I'm her accountability partner. And what that means is that every Sunday morning, she and I meet together for an hour. We share what's going on in each of our personal and professional lives. And then we leave time to give reflective feedback. So we ask for consent, but we kind of dive in and say, well, what I'm hearing is this. And over time, to witness someone else's life and growth is such a privilege. And with that, I'll introduce myself a little bit. My background is in education. I was a K-8 school administrator, excuse me for 1 second, at a wonderful school in El Cerrito, California called Prospect Sierra School. I also started a think tank with a school in LA called 14,000 Hours. And what we're really after is the belief that every individual, every child is unique. And that school should be a place where we allow the best in each person to flourish and come out. And as we know, that's not currently the case. Linda also mentioned that I grew up in the Midwest. And so, yes, I'm shaped by Midwestern values. I still consider myself a Midwesterner, although my parents now live out in California, pretty close to where I live. I also now am an entrepreneur and a business owner. We co-founded a business called Intune Collective. And Anne, if you can go to the next slide, please. Intune Collective is a consulting, executive leadership coaching, team coaching, learning and development company, and also branding and communications. It seems like a lot. It's because I work with a great team of women fueled in our business. And what we're really after is putting humanity into business, but it could be business, it could be nonprofits. We also work with schools. The main thing is that we firmly believe in the capacity and the consciousness and the awareness of human beings, that if we wake up and awaken ourselves and are connected to things in our communities that touch us, that we're connected to others that we work with, that we can create health, that we can create greater impact because we genuinely learn and like and appreciate and value working together. And so we help organizations move from A to Z along that spectrum. So, and today, what I'm here to talk about is what white leaders can do to promote racial equity. And if we can go to the next slide, please. One of the things that Intune Collective does is we also do diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, DEIB consulting. We we help organizations grow, and we have a recipe for success. And I will talk about that a little bit later, but really today we're here to grow by building capacity, resilience, and commitment in each of ourselves. So each one of us is here for a reason, and maybe just to pause right here and to just touch base with, like, what was it that you were curious about this topic that made you show up today, right? And how can you pull on that seed that is planted to keep building and growing your own personal capacity and your resilience? Because talking about racial equity is difficult and hard, and also to sustain your commitment over time. We go to the next slide. Because the intention is that if we all work together and that we learn about racial equity together and in company, then we don't feel alone. We don't have to feel the shame and the blame and the judgment, the self-judgment, or we can process difficult issues together. And is it possible to move forward one more slide? And then we can process what we're learning together, and that's the intent of today's workshop. Do you want to not spotlight me and just spotlight the slides? If we want to skip to slide 12, that's fine as well.
Is this the right one or not?
The next one, and then on to the one right after that shortly.
So one more. Okay. Is this where we want to be?
No, I'm not seeing anything refresh on my side. I'm seeing just the single plant.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Well,
Oh, everyone else can see the slides?
Yeah,
Oh, gosh.
I can see them as well.
Oh,
It's in discussion questions now.
okay, so I'd like to be on slide 12, actually.
okay. I see. I don't see the slide numbers.
It's We Are Learning Together up at the top, and it's people
Okay.
standing in a circle.
Okay.
And other people are saying they can only see the plant.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm seeing,
Now
I'm seeing
so
the slides
is everybody.
moving. It
So
looks
there's
like
some people who can see the slides moving and some people who cannot.
Oh, that's weird.
Let's see.
Huh. I don't really
Well,
know what to do because they're moving from me.
they're moving for you. Okay, and if you could put it on the slide with the people with their arms around.
Yep, that's what
I'm going
I'm
to
seeing
visually
right now.
describe the slides for those who cannot see it. So we have a slide of people standing in a circle with their arms around each other. And the caption says, "We are learning together. No one is alone, bad or wrong in this work." Great, I can see the slides. And what this means is that, again, back to you are all here together. I encourage you to reach out and continue the conversation after today. That this is not bad or wrong, because as human beings, we are finding our way together in a world that is increasingly diverse, in a world that is increasingly global, and in the world where increasingly there's more conflict. And how do we resolve that together? And so it takes us being brave, and it takes our conscious awareness of ourselves to drop into a place where we can stay vulnerable and find safe places where we can continue learning, just like this one. So I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity and for the leadership that has brought us all together today to learn together. We can go to the next slide. I like to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion and why it matters. So I have a Venn diagram of 3 circles. The first one is purpose, work that matters. You each are here in your own roles within your organization. Your organizations that you work for have something that you're after. And so that is the purpose, and that's the content of the work that we all do. Alongside of it is another circle that says processes. And so, Anne, that would be the next slide if you want to move forward. And the processes govern like how we work together, whether it's one-on-one or in small teams, and whether it's organization-wide. And so what are the dynamics that feel healthy, that feel inclusive, that invite us in? And the third Venn diagram is the people. So the relationships have to work. The relationships become the foundation of how we communicate. It's going to, yeah, you can stay here, how we communicate. And in order to have what I call dignity, belonging, and safety. So I see dignity, belonging, and safety as a little bit of a bridge way to think about diversity, equity, and belonging, or diversity, equity, and racial justice. Like every human being, what unites us is the need for dignity, belonging, and safety. And so that bridges across race, social, economic, global cultures, because fundamentally, and if you're a health practitioner, you know, or if you work in the psychology space, like mutual and self-respect is at the foundation of what a human being needs to feel grounded and alive, and to feel safety as well. And we work and strive to feel safe and seen and known. And so we are striving to feel dignity. In inclusion and equity is another way to think about belonging, because ultimately inclusion and equity is to foster belonging, is to foster a sense of belonging, so that we're giving the message that we all deserve a place at the table. We all deserve the shoes that fit us. And so the belonging is an energetic felt sense. You can tell when you walk into a room whether it's inclusive. You can tell when you start bumping up against a place of work whether it's equitable, because of how they're communicating, what the policies are. So The last piece, the last circle, is that safety is about the psychological, emotional, identity safety, and also physical safety of each individual and each group. And what that means is that when we don't feel safe, we don't step into the circle. When we don't feel safety, we don't do our best work. When we don't feel safe, we don't connect with other people. So those relationships that are important start falling apart. And so we really want to stay focused on how do we elevate dignity, belonging, and safety for all people. And if we go to the next slide, slide 5. Yes, thank you. Because without dignity, belonging, or safety, we start to defend ourselves. We all know about fight, flight, freeze, and appease as conditioned tendencies that we bring into how we relate to other people. If you can think about the last time where you had conflict with someone and you felt you weren't being respected, you felt like they weren't hearing you, that your voice didn't matter. This could be at home, this could be at work, this could be with your child. You know, if you think about the relationship and the quality, there's some trigger that happens. And if you look at it, there's something in you that said, I feel threatened or I feel unsafe. And then you get elevated and you go into a conditioned tendency, which comes from a very young place within all of us. Some people fight it out because they feel like, you know, I need to stand in there. And some people shrink, like literally if you go inside of yourself, you can feel a part of you that's just shrinking into a smaller ball. That's what we say about playing small. How do we stand up and play big again? Some people appease. It's like an animal in the wild, or a dog, a domesticated dog. When they feel like they're threatened, some roll over on their bellies and say, hey, I'm safe here. I am not a threat here, but they're actually disvaluing themselves in that way. And then the last one is freeze, which is very similar to going away, but it's like you might freeze and be present, but you're not contributing. You're not connecting anymore. So what we're trying to do is really being in the zone of genius, in this window of tolerance, where we are calm enough to learn as people learning about racial justice and health equity. How can I stay calm so that I can take in the learning? How can I not feel like I'm getting it wrong or not doing it right or not doing enough? How can I not self-judge myself, but really work to expand my window of tolerance so I can stay in the game? How can I help expand the window of tolerance for other people? What can I do for BIPOC people, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and other people of color, myself included? How can we help create a safe space where dignity and belonging actually exist so that people feel like they're in their window of tolerance to be their best selves, so that people can participate in society, participate at work? What happens when we're not seen and valued and our window of tolerance diminishes and we get triggered is you can also go into the fight, the flight and the freeze, where you're shut down. You feel like you're avoiding the conversations. You're avoiding saying what's needed and helpful. You freeze, get paralyzed. It might look like procrastination. There's so much to learn about racial justice. I don't know where to start, right? So there's a lot of ways to step back in and say, how can I expand and stay in my window of tolerance? Next slide, please. So what would it take to support the experiences of BIPOC in order to have dignity, safety, and belonging really elevated, right? What are the concrete things that we can start doing? So on the dignity side, you know, really check in, like, how do we respect BIPOC as humans, right? As friends, as people that we are curious about, and respect their lived experiences. So we each have our experiences. We each have our own upbringing. This is where we're all very unique, again, in our regards, and not to make assumptions that we know where someone's coming from. So I'm from the Midwest, but I'm not making very many assumptions about our shared experiences and our non-shared experiences. But if I were to step in with curiosity and ask you questions about, hey, tell me about your upbringing in Minnesota, or tell me what it's like to live in your neighborhood these days, Or what is it like to work, at your place of work? That we can start having genuine, grounded conversations. Brian Stevenson, who is a death row justice attorney in the South, he wrote a book called Just Mercy. He talks about getting proximate, right? So how do you get close enough to people through safety and belonging? How do you get close enough to people by centering the people that you want to learn from and lowering, you're not taking yourself out of the equation, you're just staying, but you're creating room for a person to meet one another. And he says, get proximate with other people's experiences. Like, who do you need to talk to learn more about others' experiences? Who do you need to ask questions of to have more empathy and compassion develop? So who might you get proximate to in a very authentic way, in a humble, open way to just go learn, not having them do emotional labor, not having someone of color care for your emotions and care for how hard it is to learn, but just sharing openly from their life. Another thing that you can do to promote racial justice and health equity for people of color is to promote safety. How do you create safety in spaces where BIPOC are present? How do you create safety in your communities? What that looks like is if you are a people leader, or if you manage a department, looking at your policies, looking at your communications, looking at the way you bring people together, what are ways you can do to create safety and signal that you're a safe leader, that you're creating a safe community? And then how do you, on the human being side, like very social emotionally be safe as well? How do you know what's yours and what someone else's issues are? How do you keep learning for safety? Identity safety is studied. If you look at Claude Steele's work out of the University of Michigan and Stanford, he wrote a book called Whistling Vivaldi. And he talks about how a Black man in New Haven, who's a student at Yale, might have to walk down the street and see a white couple coming at him from the opposite direction. And he whistles Vivaldi to signal that I am a safe Black man. I am safe, and you don't have to cross the street when you see me coming. And that's a lot of extra emotional labor that people of color carry, because we are aware of how we show up in the world in white spaces, where the dominant culture of whiteness has imprinted on how we need to adjust ourselves. And a word for that is code switching. It's like, what hat do we wear in different places? How much space do we take up? How do we behave so that we are safe ourselves? So as a white person, a white racial justice leader, a white health equity leader, you could help create space by saying things like, I'm working really hard to practice being a better ally. I intend to create safety in this space. I invite all voices welcome, and invite people to be aware of how much space we're stepping in and stepping out of. And if there's anything I can do to do this better, please let me know. The last one is belonging, creating balance by allowing more representation, voice, agency, and input by BIPOC people. So if you're looking at a seminar, webinar, a meeting, and you can look around the room, just take in what kind of diversity is represented. And I'm not just talking about race always, but whose voices are represented, who has a seat at the decision-making table, whose input is actively solicited. And those are things that we probably have more control over than we think. And where can we step into advocacy around this? And then I have one more slide before we go into the breakout rooms. So really shifting towards conscious allyship as a racial justice and health equity leader means confronting both the small and larger impact on other people who have less social, cultural, educational, economic, and political privilege. That's a lot across the band, are due to skin color. Racism exists. It is a real thing. Racism is subtle and it's overt. It has a whole spectrum of behavior. And it means that, we're living in a way that challenges this systemic oppression because it's so pervasive, and it entails building relationships with both people of color and white people. And the reason for that is that as white people learn, how can you share learning with each other? How can you work together, lock arms and keep going? And how can you work with people of color to hear their experiences and give more representation so that you can effectively challenge their thinking about race? You're committed to learning, evolving, and not giving up. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Linda for breakout rooms. When we come back, I just have one more slide that will bring us into closing.
Great. And if you could show the next slide, people will see the discussion questions. They're also in the chat box, or sorry, in the calendar invite, and we can send them out as well to the broadcast. So you will see when you go to your breakout room, you'll just automatically go there, the facilitators of your group, and we'll have 15 minutes. If your group somehow doesn't work for you based on what we agreed upon, or you have questions, just come back to the main room. So see you in 15 minutes. And it may take a second to put you there.
And while that's happening, I just want to thank Anne for running the slides. Everything's working perfectly as it should.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. Enjoy your groups.